Něco ti povím, něco ti povím. Ještě. To. Mluvím česky.
A teď anglicky, povídám anglicky. Teďka ti přepnu na český kanál, abys mě neslyšel.
Slyším se.
Stačí takhle?
Thank you, and a very good morning, and it's a pleasure to have you all here. I don't know your backgrounds, but seeing a lot of young faces here in the room, some experienced faces, I assume you are thirsty for knowledge. We have here the opportunity to share over the next 2 hours that knowledge. Good morning. You fill the last seat available. There is one in the front row. That is very good. So my name is Dirk Leser. I'm German of origin, as you hear from the accent. I'm working for UN Tourism in Madrid, the UN Organization for Tourism, specialized agency. I'm doing that for a long time. I'm currently directing the area of sustainability and resilience in our organization. Later, through the moderation, very little time is left for the moderation. Most of the time is given to our distinguished speakers here. We have the possibility to reflect a bit about sustainability and environmental sustainability especially. So, for those young in age, we all were as thirsty as you were back then. Oh, I see here more spaces. These are the ones we occupied before. Nobody dared to sit there. And hope guiding you a little bit through this discussion and to lighten the fire. I heard that in the academic world with a great pleasure not too long ago in a Jesuit community where the curator of the exposition there explained us the teaching concept in our nowadays world, and she said, what we are doing here with the kids is not spoon feeding, it's lighting fires. And if these 2 hours have one purpose, it's to light the fires in you, meaning that you are leaving this room with some new ideas, some refreshed ideas, some practitioners' insights where to start. We all want to improve very often, though our difficulty is that we waste energy. Waste energy because we are walking the wrong path and doing that for too long, and then later on, in the best case, are changing the direction, but very often people are disappointed, and that is something where these formats of discussions can always be helpful, especially when so much experience is present in the panel here. And the organizers asked me to bring to your attention, if you are not familiar with it already, to scan the code, the QR code, and through that then later on transmit to me and my fellow panelists here your questions so that you can influence later on the discussion. And I hope that technology is assisting us. If not, then we are collecting the question the wild manner, as the professors here for sure know that from the students in the room. So with that, environmental aspects of tourism and sustainability. Who of you is not familiar with the concept of sustainability? Well, I personally make the experience wherever I go, that is one of the core connotations of any presentation, sustainable. And I think there's very little need to promote the concept of sustainability anymore outside of a classroom or in the public sphere. However, in our sector, the tourism sector, we have a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do, you are nodding, because it's a sector which, when I started, was still below the millions. We were very proud of millions when we are referred to tourism, international tourism. And we saw in the period after the Second World War when tourism started in the way that many people had access to it. But nowadays we are speaking of the billions. We don't have millionaires anymore, we have billionaires we are looking up to. So the dimensions have significantly changed. And to conclude here and then to invite already our first presenter, Professor Richard Butler, to tell you that the tourism sector is actually very, very, very unique. You all know that, that's why you are sitting here, right? The first thing I wanted to tell you about what is so unique about the tourism sector is that whenever there is a difficulty to know is it right or is it wrong, in the tourism sector we are especially facing here challenges different to any other sector. It's a sector where we are taking today a decision where we are going tomorrow. So we are speaking about something in the future, a product in the future. The second thing is, very often, especially when it comes to international tourism, but also domestic tourism, it is something where you take a decision about what you are purchasing away from the normal place of residence. So you are sitting in a place different to where you actually will consume your product. So future, distance. The third dimension of tourism is mainly immaterial. Lots of services involved in the tourism sector. And that makes the sector to put a product on sale which is a trust and belief product. It's actually one of the most complicated products on sale. Your computers, your cell phones, before you bought them, you were able to touch them in the shop, you looked at them, you opened them, you were running the programs quickly to see the screen. You can check a bottle of water before you buy it. But in the tourism sector, we have actually the most complicated product on sale. And that is directly linked with our discussion of sustainability. We make a promise. Are we keeping the promise? A lot of this discussion will focus exactly on this enormous challenge. That is one thing which is super unique to the tourism sector. The second thing which is super unique to the tourism sector is different to other economic activities. This is a human-to-human interaction. It's the sector in its dimension which is largest, having to deal with human-to-human interactions. So whatever we are discussing in sustainability has more to do with human-to-humans than any other sectors we can imagine in similar dimensions. With that, I finish the introductions. To the organizers, have I mentioned everything I need to mention? We will be here together for the next 2 hours, and I hope now Professor Butler, with his presentation, will set the grounds and develop the core concepts so that we know then later on from many years of his experience also as a geographer what to expect from good planning. Professor Butler, please.
Well, good morning. I'd like to thank the organizers very much for bringing me over here from the west coast of Canada. I'm still a bit jet-lagged 2 days later. I'm still 9 hours behind you, but mentally, hopefully, on time. This is my second visit to Prague. The first visit was, I would guess, before almost any of you were here, was 1973. And I came to a conference in Olomouc and had 3 days at the end in Prague. It was a very different Prague then. None of the new buildings, very few tourists, a lot of Soviet Union people in uniform, and an interesting experience. But it was a wonderful experience because we brought my 6-month-old daughter with us, and she opened so many doors because so many Czech people were so kind seeing a baby from a couple of lost foreigners. It was worth carrying her around to open the doors for us. Now, I titled my paper, Encouraging More Sustainable Tourism. Reading that, it's encouraging more sustainable tourism, not encouraging more sustainable tourism. I don't think we've got sustainable tourism anywhere. As long as you travel, you blow sustainability, because the travel itself ruins any chance of being truly sustainable. Even if you travel by train, you're still not quite sustainable. So it's a dream, it's a myth. Maybe we'll never get, I don't think we'll ever get there. What I think is more important is that we make the effort towards it. If we don't, if we say it's useless, forget it, we'll be in an even bigger mess than we are now. So, this was an article in the London Times, May the 9th, and it was talking about 4 million people a year visit the national park in Mallorca, in the Canaries rather, and underneath there, if you can read the print, they're going to introduce an eco-tax, which is, you know, what people are doing these days, and it talks then about security cameras to control the number of visitors. They haven't revealed what numbers are considered to be excess and what would happen when they detected saturation. And that to me sums up really where most places are. One of the things Dirk said when we were meeting to talk about this is things happen in real space, and this is happening all over the world. I don't see over-tourism as a global problem. I see it as a local problem that is all over the world. So how do we handle that? Is it a problem? Is it a success? It's a success that 4 million people can go to the Canaries for a holiday. That is a tremendous social and economic achievement. But we are naive if we don't believe it brings problems. And so it is a problem in terms of environmental impact, which is our focus, and also some social and economic problems that are also brought about by that. Now, yesterday, if those of you that were here yesterday morning, particularly when we were in the first session, the focus was almost entirely on numbers and growth. Tourism is an economic giant. There's no point in, I think, as some of my academic colleagues do, turn their eyes away from the economic side and focus on the social and environmental problems. Tourism is successful because it works. It brings money from one place to another. It's probably the most efficient way of disseminating money across the world because people do it voluntarily. So if you're interested in getting aid to some small Pacific island, tourism is probably the quickest and easiest way to do it. And people spend the money voluntarily. They'll probably like to spend less, but they'll do it voluntarily. That is not going to go away. Numbers are going to go up. Every forecast that we have is more people, and more people with more money able to become more tourists. So the problems we have now are not going to get better unless we alter some things and control other things. We've had 40 years since sustainability became a topic for discussion. Dirk asked if everybody knew what we meant by sustainable tourism. I would lay any money that if I ask each of you to write down what it means, you'll come up with 29 different answers. And that is the problem. What I think of as sustainable tourism is not what you will think, or you will think. You'll have something a little bit different. And that is part of the problem. We need commonality about goals and objectives and what we are trying to do. If we take it from the original common future, it's development that does not exceed the ability of the environment to sustain it. It doesn't take much to realize we are beyond that already, and we've got global warming and everything else. So we have problems. We have a problem that is going to get bigger as well as probably becoming more successful. So, did it go?
No.
Right, environmental problems. They are numerous. We know what some of them are. Our problem with most of the environmental issues is that we deal with them reactively. We don't deal with them until they appear. So, with the mountain in Canaries, the problem is footpath erosion, litter, garbage, all sorts of problems. But we are reacting now. That is 20 years too late. We should have been reacting with controls, organization, management, information when tourism started, or before tourism started. We tend to have blink of vision with respect to tourism. I say we, I mean basically everybody. We think of it as a nice industry that people come to out of enjoyment. Nobody used the word enjoyment or pleasure yesterday. I mean, that's what it's about, and money. But people engage in tourism because they want enjoyment out of it. And if we forget that, I think we'll forget any chance of actually being able to amend it and alter it slightly. So, in terms of looking for things, what should we be looking forward to? Will there be change? Whenever there is human use, there is nearly always change. Is it positive or negative? Do we want it or do we not want it? Is it temporary or is it permanent? So one of the issues is deciding on what we want and how we implement any mitigation measures. So we need to identify the causes of impact, not just numbers of people, but what are they doing? Is the change direct? Is it simply feet eroding footpaths? Is it disturbance, that people are disturbing wildlife, vegetation, and so on, unintentionally perhaps, but inducing further change? Or, of course, now, is it natural change, if you take climate change as natural? And is it one time, one-off? Is it irregular, regular, continuous, or what? And what is the scale? We can all talk about impact. Tourism has all sorts of impacts. But how important is the impact? There's a lot that isn't important. And one of the things with big data now is that we should be able to sort out what is important and what is significant versus what is, if you like, maybe important to a few, but trivial in the large scale of things. So in terms of the scale of impact, how big? What areas are being affected? A small area, a whole park? As important, and perhaps more important, what is unique about that area? Is it important because it's the only habitat for particular species? Is it important because if it gets eroded, that will set in motion a whole stream of other impacts that we don't want? What are the variety of elements that are affected and the nature of the impact? Now, this is a very old diagram from a colleague of mine in Canada, Jeff Wall. And if you look at it, you wonder how on earth we can ever get our heads around what is going on. Because you can see, if you disturb wildlife, if we just take from the middle going down, you disturb, you alter the habitats, you kill it, you alter population change, you alter species composition, and all of those affect all of the other things. They affect the vegetation, the water, and the soil. So we are dealing with a system that is incredibly complex, simple to look at initially, but the more you dig into it, the more complex and difficult it is, which is why we need all of the advantages coming out of advanced technology to be able to store sufficient data to be able to handle some of these problems. So we need to do things like identifying indicator species. What are the key species that tell us what is happening? The old analogy of taking a canary down a mine, and if the canary dies, it means there's gas, you have to get out quick. What are the canaries to tell us what is important? What species do we need to watch to be able to tell what is happening? Can we record the change, the elements, Monitoring is absolutely essential. Don't believe anybody that says they understand and they're conscious of the change that's happening if they're not monitoring. If you're not measuring what is happening, you don't know what is happening. So monitoring is key to any successful planning, control, mitigation. And monitoring is complex. It has to be consistent. One of the worst things is having changes in government, changes in management, changes in order of what they think is important. One of the advantages generally of population censuses is that you ask the same questions decade after decade after decade, and you can see what's happening. Quite often with environmental impacts, we have very short term. Speaking as a university academic, if you want money to do research, to monitor change in a national park, if you're very lucky and successful and have a good record, you might get a grant to fund 2 or 3 years. Now, any scientist will tell you 2 or 3 years really is useless, because it could be an exceptionally cold year, a very wet year, a very dry year, and your means, your controls, you don't have any. So a 2 to 3 year environmental project will give you some information, but it won't give you very much. And so consistency, replicability, so you do the same thing again and again, and then you can tell. So a limited number of indicators. We did some work in Samoa on measuring the social impact of tourism, and dealing with local people, we went from 90 down to 22 indicators, and that is still really too many to be able to deal with. Is the coverage complete? Is the frequency right? Now, if you do all of that, then you maybe can go on to what we might call the limits of acceptable change. What change is acceptable? How much? Who is going to decide what is acceptable? Expert management, tourist agencies, local management, local government, national government, NGOs. Everybody has opinions on what is acceptable or isn't acceptable. If you can decide what change you're prepared to take, how would you stop it? People talk about reducing tourism, degrowth, and so on. And, you know, you can't degrowth unless you know what's going to happen. So mitigating is difficult, it's costly, it's politically sensitive, and it's probably unpopular. So, given all of that, I would argue we have to do something differently. So, making more sustainable tourism, given the future growth, given what is happening, an alternative approach is changing human attitudes. Dirk spoke a little bit on this. Without changing our attitudes, all of us on holiday, we're not going to get very close to anything like sustainability. We haven't adopted sustainable tourism, basically because it implies constraints and it implies additional cost. So my argument would be we make travel more sustainable, less unsustainable. But to do that, we have to persuade tourists that sustainable travel can still be fun. It shouldn't be any more expensive or difficult than conventional travel. And we need to link home and holiday sustainable behavior. And as well, as a grandfather, we need to encourage sustainability in future generations. Now, book plug here, colleague and I produced this. We kind of fancied the penguins, but you know, those of you, many of you probably don't, have kids. You'll know when you're traveling, it's the dreaded, are we there yet, come back, which is what we took as the title. But we wrote the book basically aimed at parents in particular, showing them what they might be able to do without really spoiling their fun or costing them any more money. Because if you don't do that, telling them you must be more responsible, you must go to green places, people just forget it. They don't. They go where they want, and they do what they want, because the element of tourism is always freedom of choice to select where you go to do what you want. Now, some of the stuff you might want to do is inappropriate, and various cities like Amsterdam and others have attempted to cut that out. But we, in the book, we focused on things like these. Travel modes, how you get there, when you go, what type of destination, what type of accommodation, everything down to packing. You know, how can you pack more sustainably to carry less, and so on. With the hope that, if you're informed gently and positively, change may result. We can talk about degrowth and demarketing to reduce pressure. None of those actually reduce total tourist numbers. They're still going to go up. And the question is, where do they go? If we reduce numbers in one place, they go somewhere else. And that's not a solution. What we need to do is make sure that people going are less harmful than they are at present. So it means reducing impact, not necessarily reducing tourist numbers. After COVID, almost nobody wants to reduce tourist numbers significantly. Now, you know, that won't solve anything. It may help a few people travel more sustainably. But without the changes in behavior to a more sustainable form individually, we're not going to get anywhere. So my argument is, we know what the problems are. We are too reactive, not proactive, in identifying them in advance and trying to deal with them. But if we don't alter the causes, which is us, then we're not going to be very successful anywhere. Okay, thank you.
Very much, Richard. Richard, thank you very much for provoking us with your initial statement and saying there's no sustainable travel. I would like to invite our three fellow panelists right now to reflect on that for Richard and to say whether they would agree or disagree with that while you are preparing maybe your question for Richard while his presentation still is fresh. But maybe I start with Olivier. There's no sustainable travel?
I believe this is not what Richard said. He said that it is difficult to know what is sustainable travel. And actually, there is, in the literature, something called the say-do gap. People say they want to travel sustainably, but they don't know how, they don't know what is sustainable travel. So, we have here people from the academic world. I'm from, let's say, the business side. And what we have to do is to try to bring the information to explain what a sustainable trip, vacation, business trip is. And for that, we need data and we need standards. Because there is something which is very difficult for me, possibly for you. If you go on a website and you want to book an air ticket, and you might see the CO2 emission of that air trip. And you go to another website, and it's going to be different. And you go to another website, and it's going to be different. So what does it do for you to understand what sustainability is? So again, I would really stress, and I hope I understood what you said, Richard, but it's not that there is no sustainability or people don't want sustainability, but it's because it's very difficult today to understand what it is, and we have to bring that evidence to people.
Thank you, Olivier. I think your standards argument, we will have that later in your presentation. Richard, was that interpretation right, what Olivier did? And you spoke about an implementation gap?
Yeah, is this on?
Yes.
Most of the travel is totally unsustainable. There are elements, you know, if you walk, if you cycle, if you go on a sailboat, you're not consuming any energy, you can have sustainable travel. Once you get into something driven by an engine requiring power, you are becoming less sustainable. And despite all the advances, and there have been massive advantages and improvements in air travel and whatever, it's still totally unsustainable. So if you go to an eco-lodge in Amazonia and live like a native for 6 weeks and go home and pat yourself on the back that you've been a sustainable tourist, you forget about the 8,000 kilometers each way that you've gone in a jet aircraft. And that's what worries me. I am a fervent sustainability supporter, but I think we cover ourselves that the operations sometimes are quite sustainable. But as you said, the measures of them are chaotic. You don't know what to believe, who to trust, what is reality. And that is part of the difficulty. Even if you want to be as sustainable as you possibly can be, how you do it is difficult for the average person. It's bad enough for us.
Thank you, Richard, for that explanation. I think that there is a component in there which goes beyond what Olivier was just interpreting into it. But I think that, Sonia, coming from a linear economic model to a circular economic model, that has a lot to do with how we are making good use of the resources we are extracting or putting to use. How would you react to Richard's original statement? Would you agree?
Totally, mainly with the last slide with the book, Traveling More Responsible with Your Children. I think when I was listening to your presentation, what I had in my mind when you were mentioning sustainable and unsustainable, for me it's related to conscious and unconscious. If we are traveling consciously, and if we put a lot of effort on planning, as you said, like where I'm going, why am I going there? Is there a possibility to see it online, or is it important for me to go there personally? If I go there personally, what kind of transport I choose? Am I going to take a plane, or do I have time to take 2 days more and take train because I like it and I will work on that train with something? I think the consciousness while I'm traveling is very important, because if we are unconscious, just watching Instagram, watching those places where I can go and immediately buying the ticket because I feel that's the place where I have to go, it's very much related to sustainable and unsustainable, and circular and uncircular or linear world. Because when you go there and you think about consumption that you're making on the way there, you can shortly change your behavior and be more responsible. But to avoid all those unsustainable choices, we have to be present, we have to evaluate what we are doing, and most importantly, and for many of you, maybe it's ahead of you, to talk about that with your children and to show them examples. Because very often, and last point, when I travel with my 2-year-old son, and when we go there somewhere by plane, he's even asking me, and are we going to travel by train? And I'm saying, no, we are taking plane for these holidays. And he was like, but going with train is more fun. And I was like, yeah, that's true. And these small steps are affecting a lot, because next time when you'll be organizing conference, you will take into consideration whether you're going to invite your guests by plane, or maybe support them with taking a sustainable solutions. So I would like to just highlight what Richard said about personal responsibility.
Thank you very much. Sonia, your chance to react to Richard's statement. Would you also agree?
Yes. Is it okay, the question?
No, it was Martina, sorry. sorry.
Okay, thank you for the question. Actually, I totally agree with all the speakers and also with Sonia, what she explained. What I feel, what I would stress, that everybody, all the tourists, visitors, they need live with the idea that there are limits. It's kind of capacity. See, this is quite clear. I can put the water hours hoping that it will be okay. It's the same with tourism. I need to live with it. And another thing, I totally agree with what Sonia explained, because if you travel, you should plan. quite a long time before. If you return, you should reflect to your students, to your parents, to your community. It needs time. You need to absorb what you have experienced. It is a kind of slow traveling, and I really agree with this concept, because in this way, you really live authentically on the place with the people, with the local inhabitants. And this is something which I believe, maybe I'm too radical, sorry for this, but I believe that this is the only way actually of sustainable traveling. Because you should respect what's in the place, what's in the destination, how the people are living their lifestyle, the rhythm of their life, etc. And this is authenticity. So you return back, authentic, really authentic experience. You live in the local infrastructure. It means that there are no big tourism words. I mean, different words in comparison with the local word. So this is very important, that you are not making a pressure to change destination to be place of visitors. And this is what I believe. You accept the limit, you receive authenticity,
Yeah.
but you need to pay for authenticity. Everything has its own price, and the pay is that you reduce the comfort, probably, of your stay, but it will be authentic, and you will remember a very long time what you really experienced. So, sorry, maybe to be long, to be a little bit radical, but this is what I feel is a really sustainable way of traveling.
Okay, the purpose was, as I said at the beginning, to use these 2 hours to provoke thoughts in the audience. The panelists here are to expose and to reflect. And I saw now a lot of alignment, and sustainability and tourism have enormous challenges, and that is an assessment for today. Richard outlined for the future. The solutions is where we might then later on need to get better understandings on the way how we are finding solutions for that, because what we are actually discussing here today in its dimension is very small. The tourism sector we are witnessing as we are speaking here is very small. That dimension, which grew over the last years in impressive charts in international and domestic dimensions, is very small. And I repeat saying that because one of the major drivers of tourism is the growing middle class, meaning that you have more income available than you need to sustain your absolute normal needs. And once this income is becoming available, you start spending it on a discretionary activity such as tourism. It is not needed from that classical, original perspective, but it is needed for another dimension which goes beyond the purely environmental and has then repercussions on the value setting, on the environmental perspective. And the middle class around this globe by 2030 will represent about 70% of the global population. We should not forget that. And I mentioned it to some of you before when we analyzed for the first time the environmental implications just of transportation for the tourism sector, for the carbon footprint. And we calculated the movements, which very often are just calculated in their international dimensions. And you know the famous 1.8 billion tourist arrivals, right? The younger ones among us here in the room, 1.8 billion international tourist arrivals. Who hasn't heard of that figure by 2030? So yeah, we have forecasted that already about 10 years ago. But what we haven't shared at that moment was the domestic dimension of international tourism. We had a very Western view back then. And in that calculation, we came up that in total by 2030, domestic, international, and same-day visitors, we speak about 37 billion trips per year by the year 2030. And this domestic dimension in India and China has the dimension we would count for in Europe as international tourism, because traveling from Belgium to the Netherlands or to Austria in their dimension is over there a domestic trip. And now, having reflected that that is a dimension in very few years, and this mobility which is implied by it, we know that these societies around the world are significantly changing, that mobility is a permanent part of our lifestyles, that we might not see a tourism product as we have consumed it today, that paid holidays, which were so far a limitation for our way of consuming or going on holidays, the 30 days, which were created everything else for than for tourism. They were created originally so that we have a time of physical recreation from the work we were performing back then. And nowadays they are used and optimized for mental stimulus. Very often when your son is asking you, why are we taking not the train, he's actually remembering not the movement to another place. He remembers the journey, and that is a stimulus for him, and he's asking for that. And many for you are asking about what outside of TikTok and the real world is taking place, because the real world is wet. It's the title of a book I gave my daughter. So there's a stimulus in our society which is transported through tourism, the tourism experience, which goes beyond, significantly beyond what we originally associated with it. But just as a short reflection, so Professor Pashkova, your 15 minutes are the next ones, please.
So this is a really very, very difficult task to speak after Richard Butler, to tell something relevant. But anyway, of course, I will try. I make some notes during Richard's speech, so sorry that I have some note here. Normally I don't follow any notes, but I think it's important to react on each other. So let me start with kind of analogy, because I really see that very relevant. Tourism many times is being compared to fire. And fire is something very, very profitable, something very important for human life. It was really big device in the evolution of the human, as anybody knows. But everybody also knows that it is very dangerous. It's like tourism. So just imagine the fire. Use your imagination. Tourists, visitors, they can come closer to the fire and enjoy its heat, warming, singing, presence of the others, dancing, fun, of course. But they can leave whenever they want. They are not living around the fire. But they are local inhabitants, and they can't leave. It's their place of living here. And they may suffer in the night by noise, by light, by overheat. So, and it can be even danger, because when not managed well, the fire is really dangerous. And it could burn up everything. The heating is really very dangerous. And just imagine also the favorite forest of the local inhabitants can be cut down also for firewood, for example. These are just analogies, but I think they are very, very important. So, many times we see destinations like this, many types of destination, mountains, jungle, or Savannah in Africa, but many times they are destroyed by tourism. Why is self-destructive activity? So, of course, the problem is not in the fire of the tourism itself. The problem is in the management of this fire, as I explained. And it's the same with the places. Everybody wants to go to the most beautiful, most attractive places, but it must be managed, and it must be understood that ecosystems and also local communities, they have the capacity to absorb certain amount of the tourists. And my question is also, which is very important for authentic tourism, if there really large footprint on the visitor in the location visited, I mean, how you are impacted as a tourist by tourism, by destination, by local life. Something was mentioned our colleague Mauricio yesterday, to be exposed to the local life. This is actually the main mission of the tourism, to be exposed, to be cultivated, to recognize something new, to be enriched. Or is there a larger imprint of the visited site in the visitor? So these are different questions, and they influence the sustainability. So that's why I am asking if we really experience kind of over-tourism or under-management. I believe that this is really under-management. So there are a lot of things we can speak about sustainability, and I think that we will follow this in this panel. But anyway, quite clear is that we need clear vision. Why? Because in the destination, there are not the same local people. This is not the kind of homogeneous community. No. You have different groups, very heterogenic, with different needs, different life, different age, different possibilities, different money, different budget. Some are closer to the main attractions, which are heavily impacted by tourism. Some are in the distance, and they can enjoy a lot of incomes from tourists. So they have different perspectives and different perception of the tourism impact. This is very important. So you need to find a vision which is common for everybody. You need to find the compromise which is possible to live for anybody in the destination. It can be 1 or 2 years process. It's not just to write down strategy and to be happy that we have perfect sustainable strategy, which is very nice on the paper. No, this is a long process to find a compromise for different groups with the different needs in the destination. We need, of course, balance these different needs. We need to monitor, as was explained, the impacts to understand how to change the future strategy. We need to deal with the local people and involve them to really profit. And finally, we need to manage. This is very shortly said. So again, I just would stress authenticity. For me, this is key point of sustainable tourism. Because if you really want, as a tourist, to have authentic experience, it's not possible actually to be accommodated somewhere in a very big, nice infrastructure, and the local people are living totally different life. And you, during the day, you go from a very nice house built infrastructure, hotel, 5 stars, and you go like in a human zoo to make the pictures of the local authentic life. It's not like this, because in this way, you can't understand real life. And you are really like photographer here to make a picture, but there is no understanding of the local life. And for me, tourism is really to understand the local level, the local living, local life, local people, culture. So local indigenous people are very important, and you should be part of them, or try to be. Of course, you can't be never ever real part, but you should try for a few days or weeks to live with them in their style. In this way, there is no over-tourism, because if you are using their accommodation in their houses, They accept so many people, which is sustainable for them. They can't live with the crowded houses because then the price obtained or income obtained from tourism is can be compared with suffering from overcrowding. So this is natural balance if just the local infrastructure is used. Of course, that this is not possible everywhere. If you are in the urban environment, in big cities, of course you need infrastructure for congresses, etc. But this is not destructive, this kind of infrastructure in the big cities. I'm speaking about really authentic rural places, which are many times totally distracted by tourism. So this is very simple picture, what I'm telling you. If you want sustainable tourism, you need responsible tourism actors. The more the behavior of the tourism actors is responsible, the more is tourism sustainable. So this is a very, very simple idea. We are just speaking about behavior and about a kind of a phenomenon of sustainability. And Richard was speaking or asking about causes of unsustainability. For me, this is tragedy of commons. That's the very, very simple concept which is explaining why tourism is unsustainable in many destinations. Because, just imagine, on the individual level, individual businesses in destinations, they are deciding on a, let's say, rational way, because they want to optimize their business, they want to maximize their profit. So this is rational decision making on the individual level. But why on the collective level, on the level of destination, is not rational, is destructive, is self-destructive. Just read or study something about tragedy of commons, and you will understand perfectly what happens. Because the attractions in the destination are shared by all the actors. And if you are responsible and you spare the capital, the natural and cultural heritage, the other, they don't do it, and it's for nothing. And your responsibility is actually making problems in the competition for you. So, of course, it's not maybe easy to understand just on the first time, but you should go deeper. You will understand perfectly that this is one of the reasons of unsustainability. Actually, in this way, you should understand that everybody, as I told, wants to visit the most attractive place of the destination. But it doesn't mean that always it must be over-tourism here. Not all the beautiful, attractive women are prostitutes. And this is the same with the destination. You need, as a destination, also reflect your possibilities, your limits, and manage the tourism like this. So how to optimize the tourism impact? Of course, the carrying capacity, as I explained, you should regulate, you should prefer small case, you should try to interpret heritage in the way which makes tourism sustainable, and you should involve the community, you should concentrate on the authenticity. And carrying capacity is totally central concept for sustainability, I believe. But many times people think that this is kind of fixed number, that this is kind of characteristic of the destination, that each destination has certain limit to absorb some certain amount of tourists. But this is not like this. This is not DNA of some ecosystem or certain territory, because it is the possibility to absorb some amount of tourists depends also on the character of tourism itself, how it is managed, which type of tourists, how they behave. So altogether is important. So in this way, we were speaking about proactive or reactive behavior of management or destination management. So the visitor management is actually something which can change the carrying capacity of the area substantially. Just imagine some sponge. It can absorb some amount of water, but if it's milk or honey, it's different. That's what I'm speaking about. If you have different type of tourists or different visitor management, the absorption could be different. So that's I speak about if you have an area or destination without any kind of visitor management, which happens in many development countries, the carrying capacity is quite low, and the curve described by Richard Butler is very sharp and not very sustainable. If you have reactive visitor management, it's better but not still perfect. And if you have proactive, it's the best solution, of course, and it's much higher carrying capacity as well. We need to speak, of course, about social responsibility, but there is no time to go to details. But this is something which is totally important. We have many approaches. The main is, of course, kind of prevention. The other approach is kind of compensation. So you compensate that you are somehow using or consuming, let's say, resources in the destination. So you compensate to local inhabitants or other actors. But the better is, of course, always find the kind of prevention, but not all impacts can be prevented, as Richard explained perfectly. So I just want to very shortly give some best practice examples because we've been asked for this. So everybody knows about ecotourism, volunteer tourism. I mentioned slow tourism. Also ethnotourism is important. Volunteer tourism and cohabitation tourism is something which I already mentioned, that you are really living local life for a week or more. That's kind of a new tourism which is really sustainable. But myself, I am living by geoparks. That's my emotion, that's my life. So just to mention very shortly, this is for me really type of sustainable tourism because it has very, very powerful management. That's something, quality management of these areas which we call geoparks, and they live from geotourism economically. So this is very important that they have each 4 years kind of revaluation from various point of view, starting from financial management, human resources management, interpretation for tourists, involvement of local inhabitants and indigenous, and all these spheres. So I need to conclude somehow. Yeah, but geopark territory is important from kind of, let's say, geological phenomena it has, but all the other Earth heritages. It is also very attractive for tourists, and it must have kind of creative and responsible community because this is bottom-up concept. And they somehow focus on holistic approach to be sustainable. You as a visitor, you need to understand the value of the heritage and the interconnection between abiotic, water, kind of mountains, rocks, with the biotic, with the plants and some animals, and with the cultural aspects, material, immaterial, folklore, everything. Always it is interconnected. So geoparks, they focus on complex explanation to tourists, to understand and to value, and then to be sustainable as well. GeoFood is something which is very attractive, but there is no time. I wanted also to tell you that we've been in ITV trade fair, and we won the third place, and it was real success. So I was very surprised how attractive it was for visitors of the trade fair. So the final response which we obtain from organizer, the value of United Nations tourism for sustainability. I think that they should continue to work with categories of UNESCO, these designated territories like World Heritage Sites or Biosphere Reserves or UNESCO Global Geoparks, because they use kind of competitions, certifications, awareness games, etc. And they also should cooperate with the national committees for UNESCO in each country or in each region. And I mean also that the indigenous people are very important last years, because they have very wise, let's say, knowledge, which is very different from the scientific knowledge, but very traditional. But it was discovered, for example, for adaptation to the climate change in various places. This is really a big wisdom that they present. So this is also very important for sustainable tourism to work with the local and indigenous people and their own knowledge. And the second question was about how each individual tourist should contribute to sustainability. Actually, I think I told it already. It is mainly the social responsibility. We've been speaking about this approach that you should plan before you're traveling to understand the place, to understand the culture, mentality of the people, the religious aspects, the sacred places, to respect all these things and to be able really to cohabit with them. And after you return, you should reflect to your own audience at home, not only to be admired by this audience, but mainly to share your experience and to absorb your experience, to take the time to somehow work with the experience you have to make it useful for your future life and for the people around you. Of course, it has much more details, but I will conclude with the cohabitation and tourism pictures. I think it's quite illustrative. And finally, with this picture from Peru, from Canyon Colca. I visited some mayors here when we've been building the geopark here. And I was very, very surprised by the final answer of the mayor from one small village here, because we've been speaking about tourism sustainability. I was warning them, please don't make from this beautiful, authentic place some big tourism resort which damage everything you have here. And the mayor was quite peaceful, and he told me, Martina, relax. We really know what we have here. And we admire this beautiful territory, the sacred mountains we have. And he went out of the room and he told me, look, this is our resort of 1,000 stars. And for me, it was a fantastic answer. Thank you for your attention.
Now I understand the 1,000 stars. When I saw the PowerPoint, I didn't understand it. But Martina, thank you very much, and bringing a different dimension to that. What resonated with me was the argument of governance, which we haven't addressed here in general, and I think that what we see at the international level and what you just constantly reminded us of I wanted to provoke to our fellow panelists right now. Governance is something very often where we, as tourism professionals, limit our reflection on what we see governance is doing for tourism or with tourism. And what you repeated in your presentation was actually reflecting also on this growing dimension of tourism in our societies. And with that, we actually break right now this barrier of discussing tourism governance or governance for tourism only, and actually are entering, and that's how you concluded then, we are entering governance at all. Governance, which in many societies and in the year 2025 is actually quite an enormously important thing, isn't it? And being here in Prague, Richard mentioned he was here 40 years ago, right? 50 years ago, Richard. And I think I mentioned it last night to Olivier in the car. I came here on Interrail. I was a soldier back then for NATO when the German country reunited again. And I mentioned yesterday how little people nowadays remember this conflict which reunited my country, Germany, which was a divided country by two completely different ideologies. And did you remember that that was in large parts because of having stopped the freedom to travel? You remember that? Do you remember that? That the reunification of two completely opposite political systems was triggered because one system did not allow their citizens to travel that much, and this constant pressure and desire actually provoked what we take nowadays for granted: the power of tourism, the power of travel. And right now, going back, and we have seen the problems, and we have seen that we are very concerned in tourism about governance. Olivier, I start with you because you are the less governance prepared, I think, here in general terms from the academic perspective. With this question, do you think we are discussing in tourism very often governance issues which go beyond tourism?
Okay, I mean, again, talking from the Amadeus angle, I would just say that these are not topics, I mean, politics that we enter in. I mean, we live and operate in different countries, and we go by the rules and laws of each country. When you talk of governance and your experience from Prague some years ago, had exactly the same. Back in March, I was for the second time in Berlin. And the first time I went in Berlin was in '86. So, I mean, before the reunification. And I reflected exactly the same when I was there because, okay, we were visiting, biking, in Berlin, and every time we were wondering, are we in former East Berlin or former West Berlin? And I guess we were the only one to wonder that. I mean, all the other people, all the younger generation, they have actually no recollection, maybe no clue about the separation. So yes, I mean, this is something that we live personally, emotionally, but again, in terms of governance, beyond what is governance in ESG, environmental, social, and governance, I mean, what any company does, but the terms of governance here is more in terms of your corporate practices than what you want me to go and where I won't go.
Olivier, thank you very much, Sonia. reflecting right now on all these practical examples we heard from Martina, and now going back, governance. Yeah, is the tourism sector solving issues which go beyond the governance which is needed for the tourism sector?
I'm always trying to look for solutions, so very often I'm working on systemic changes and working with the governments. But lately, I'm more focused on people who are willing to change the system because they feel that it's necessary, and it doesn't matter that if they are coming from the government or from the universities or from the startups, because once you are personally involved in the topic and you are giving your energy to the solution, it can go bottom up and it can be more successful than strategies coming from the government. And I'm mentioning that because, and to make a follow-up on what you has been presenting in your presentation, the pace we take, how quick, how fast, how often, it's mainly about personal solutions and personal decisions. And government can guide you, can set up boundaries. As you said, the ecosystem has capacity. So the government should use the data, make strategies, and kind of set up boundaries. But most important, and what's moving the world today, are personal decisions, and those are, again, conscious and unconscious, and very often we just think it's normal to travel, it's normal to be still mobile and to move. But I think it goes, unfortunately, from both directions. We need government to be active, but as well we can't take from our back the responsibility to make final decision.
Richard, please.
I think government is key. I was very pleased yesterday when Alessandra from Italy made the comment about the importance of having politicians present. Because if you think of the triangle of economic, social, and environmental impacts or whatever for sustainability, I always used to put another box in the middle, which was politics. Because it doesn't matter how economically attractive, how environmentally benign, how socially acceptable something is. If it isn't politically acceptable, forget it. And so governance is critically important for that aspect. The other thing that we find with governance is that generally at the national level, there is the push for more jobs, more money, more tourists. At the local government level, they are dealing with the problem on the ground. And so you get a dissonance between what local government needs and wants and what national government sees as desirable. And so the interplay between the different levels of government, I think, is something we don't really look at. And yet it's something which is really important. Over-tourism happens at the local level, and it's local politicians that have to deal with it, whether it's real or imagined or a combination of other things. At the national level, no. In Canada, we have hotspots and overcrowding in very small parts of our national parks. Most of our national parks, you don't see anybody in. They're too remote. But the local management is a big problem because there are too many people concentrated in very small areas. But the federal government, which runs national parks, still wants more tourists to come in and see the national parks. So governance and the interplay between the levels of governance is particularly important.
Richard, thank you very much. And then Martina, for a last reaction, I combined right now with Richard was saying with what Olivier was saying before when asked for the first time, the implementation gap. Would you agree with Richard that there's more implementation at the local level?
Absolutely. I can tell you, sometimes it's even on the local level itself, of course, but totally agree what Richard explained. That's dissonance which is problematic everywhere. But I just remember, I tell you very, very short experience or story. We have in Czech Republic a Society for Academic Experts in Tourism sector. Years ago we had meeting. We invited one expert from Prague Information Office, and I don't want to express the person, okay, she present kind of strategy they developed because they made research, and finally, after years, they discover what we've been telling as academics nearly 20 years, something about local inhabitants, the importance, and that you need to know the perception of tourism. And she explained that they made big research and they discovered that the local people in Prague are, simply said, sorry for this, fed up with the tourism, and that they need to change the development of tourism. She was speaking like 20 minutes about this kind of results, and then after it, she started to present the strategy of tourism in Prague. And the first thing she mentioned was we need to increase the tourism numbers. And nobody is nothing. I was totally struck by this because I couldn't understand how it is possible that she's explaining 20 minutes that they discover that the local people are upset in the strategy in Czech Republic or Prague. They need increase the tourism numbers. That perfectly reflects how it is sometimes that not only a dissonance between levels, geographical levels of governance, but sometimes in the same level. So that's the life. But totally agree the importance of politicians, which must be they must be involved, personally involved also, because always your passion and your energy is something you somehow try to balance. So, yeah.
Thank you, Martina, very much. And I invite everybody right now for enjoying the biscuits and the coffee for 10 minutes. And then, just to remind you all, Sonia and Olivier, they have then their opportunity to present to us, and we continue the discussion. But in 10 minutes, please, or 8 minutes, whatever it takes to grab the coffee, the tea, please join us back here. And we allow all of you to ask questions right now to the panelists out there, and later on we discuss here on stage. Thank you very much. Coffee is served. Thank you. I'll just bring the audience back into the room. That was the enormous challenge with the coffee break. Hi, everybody, especially those outside. Shall we? The gentleman there, you are with the ministry or the private sector? Private sector. Good. Then they are now half our participants. I assume you are studying tourism. You study tourism? Yeah? Wonderful. Are you students of one of the professors? No. Why didn't you choose those professors instead of your professors? Good, good. Can we just let the others know that we started again? Thank you very much for coming back into the room. Now, Sonja, Klevik is your first name or family name? Klevik. It's family name. Okay. So we have now the pleasure of Professor Klepek Janoszova, right? Sorry for that. To join us. She doesn't have a PowerPoint presentation, but she will deliver right now a speech from the heart. Sonja, please come here to the podium. Thank you.
Good morning, maybe midday already, to everybody. Thank you for inviting me here, because the topic itself is really, as you said, close to my heart. I'm not professor yet. I'm still studying my PhD, but now I have to fulfill your introduction, and I have to study harder. But topic related to circular economy and tourism, I will try to make it fast. I have 14 minutes, and I will be having this time for me to try to understand maybe also your perspective and share with you mine. I'm the founder of Institute of Circular Economy here in Czech Republic, and when I was coming back from my long travels in the Netherlands, when I was studying there, and for the first time I've heard about circular economy, it made so much sense to me that I've realized that I have to kind of open this topic in Czech Republic, because if you see everything in a world, in your life, everything goes in circles. You have to design things, we use them, we reuse them, and if we are creative, we do not create waste at the end. But unfortunately, in current world, which is very fast and furious, we consume a lot. We consume so much that we have concept of so-called overshoot day, and every year we celebrate as a country the overshoot day, which means the day when we consume more resources that are available for the whole year. And in Czech Republic, it's usually in April, and the rest of the year we are actually consuming resources that are here for the future generations. And very similar is it with tourism. I think that if we would be slowing down the pace we have in our lives, we would already see it clearly, how much we consume in this way. I was very lucky in last 5 years. 4 of them I have spent in Kolín Monastery on kind of retreat, that would be fashion word to use in this world, and it was in silence. It was about contemplation, it was about getting back home. And when I was getting ready for this presentation, I was reminded by the sign in Tenerife, and thank you for raising the case of Tenerife, because very often when you're traveling there, and we were there 6 months ago, there is written, tourists, go home. And I think it's not just about countries, it's about getting to ourselves. And it's related very much to sustainability. Maybe you know about concept of sustainable development goals. Who knows that? Okay. Sustainable Development Goals, it's a concept of 17 global goals that we as a countries have agreed to fulfill related to sustainability in 2015. It was actually the biggest global agreement on something. It was a great success. Maybe we are too wide. 17 goals, hard to remember, hard to fulfill, hard to set up goals. But to make it happen, lately there is a global initiative called Inner Development Goals. Because many people found out that to fulfill a global goals, we have to have our own inner capability and capacity to be part of the change. If you see that something is happening globally and you are tired, you are broken, you are burnt out, you are not actually able to take part in these global visions. And I'm mentioning this concept of inner development goals as a global movement already to give you an inspiration where to start with sustainable tourism. There are 5 steps to be taken, and the first one is just being. Be with yourself, follow your heart, or listen to your soul. And it's that preparation phase that was mentioned already here many times. Before you go to trip, there is a most important part to plan. Where are you going? Why? How are you going to travel? What kind of hotel or accommodation will you choose there? Are you able to move locally on bicycle, on train? Are you able to maybe discover some new things about the country? Are you able to visit farmers, to really go to the roots, to understand what's happening in that country, what food you can consume? And I highly recommend to do that. What we really like to do with my family is to rent a van or borrow it from friends. We do not have our own. And to travel around farms, and there is an application Park for Night, and you can be accommodated at the farm, you can get fresh food, you can talk to farmer. Very often they do not speak English or your language, so you have to use your smart devices, but then you are connected to them, you are eating their food, and you really feel grounded. And those moments are endless. You're just there with them, and you slow down. And these examples are those that we have to multiply to reach the governance. The next thing that we usually do is that I look for top 10 tourist recommendations to go, and I just delete 5, 6, or 7 of them, and I choose the last 3 that might be those that are not so overcrowded by people. And then and you can do it as well, you can ask your AI, or you can go there to first of those places that will be usually full of some English-speaking people, and you can ask for private tips to go. Where would you go with your family as a local when you would like to take them for a nice trip? And this decentralization of tourism is a part of the movement that we have to raise as well. So first, listen to yourself. Secondly, talk to local people. And thirdly, to make it as a movement, we can use a guidance. We can talk to local politics, as was mentioned. Not to just promote, and if you go to the toilet, you will go about big banners with visit Zvíkov, visit Krumlov, visit those cities. But those cities in Czech Republic are already full of tourists. So what about we just really take a hidden spots and show them to our friends, or we promote them? Because those hotspots that are happening naturally by people sharing on Instagram tips to go, that are really dangerous for locals, for nature, for environment. And environment is part of this presentation as well. It was actually the reason why I'm here. Because I can tell you that if we create these hotspots full of people, it's hard to manage them. We as an Institute of Circular Economy, we do not just promote circularity as a principle, but we do also many analyses, pilot projects. We try to put people around the table, and I will share with you a few examples to imagine how it can be done. For example, here in Prague, and on local, like regional level, we do physical analysis of waste. So imagine that all those trash bins with mixed communal waste that will be maybe collected after this conference, we go through that, and we try to read in rubbish what was happening. And you can already see what can be changed. Many plastic bottles for single use, many cans, many other things or leaflets after the conferences. You can read it from the rubbish, what can be avoided. We also do it on municipal level. And for me, I have in my mind many analyses in specific sites at the touristic areas where you can see many single packaging for one use and for alcohol and for some snacks. And when we talk to the mayors, they usually say, tourists, it's a big problem for us. And we talk to them like, is it a problem? Are you inviting them, or is it you immediately call them a problem? If we talk about waste, they usually call them or call the whole system problem because it's not well managed. We do not have system for tourists to participate in local waste management. We do not communicate in different languages, just Czech. So if you go somewhere, you probably will have just Czech signs. So it's hard to make people being part of the waste collecting schemes. But on this analysis, we can read the behavior. But it's not just about finding solutions for the problem. It's about designing the system in a way that it can be friendly for tourists. And 80% of impact goes to design. In designing your shoes, clothes, computers, if you design them to be repairable, remanufacturable, recyclable, you can avoid environmental impact on the device at the beginning. And the same it is with tourism. If we will design the system that when you come to Prague, at the Prague airport, and you will be informed what kind of sustainable choices you can take in Prague, starting with how to get to the city center by tram, bus, Bolt, Uber, bicycle, what is possible. Then you can get information where to eat, what to try. Maybe not just food from the meat, maybe you can have some 5 tips to visit some local, not necessarily vegetarian, but local restaurants. We can be navigated in a system. But we have to shift the focus on those highlights and hotspots, and we have to decentralize our focus. And it can be done in design. And the same can be done in conferences. Talking about tourism in Prague, we can't avoid discussion about conferences, congresses, and business community coming to Prague. And very often it's related to organizing the conferences. And I have one example, concrete example about Happiness at Work conference. If you are Czech speaking, you can Google the same name, Happiness at Work. And the organizers of the conference that is happening and taking place here have decided to do things differently. And they've been starting from the scratch. So firstly, the same as is being used for this conference, they have asked Zátiší catering, which is placed here. The food you are eating is being cooked here, down there. They have asked for a menu that will be consisting of more than 50% of vegetarian food. They have asked for ability to bring also extra boxes for residual food that will be stay after the conference. They did many organizing when they've been organizing the conference. They did small things about reusing badges, not printing any leaflets, and many small things, but related to food and waste. It was very much related to communicating to those participants. And I think this is also the second thing that I would like to highlight, the communication. Because before you go to conference, you usually get information about program, about speakers, about venue. But you're not gonna be informed very often about how to get there and what's the most preferable way. So you can maybe just inform your hosts and participants with how to get to Congress Center in Prague by tram, by metro, or by shared platforms. And you can just providing the information about parking slots, or you can put it on the last place. So also the design of information can be adjusted to your preferences. You can, as I said, avoid making food waste while taking into consideration that your participants are asked to bring their boxes or to just take as much food as they eat, etc., etc. But I think, and concluding the presentation, it's about responsibility. And I can hardly reply to a question whether it goes top down or bottom up. I think it's about each of us understand that the responsibility is up to us. If I'm organizing the conference, the responsibility is huge. I can change behavior and decision making of thousands of participants. If I'm just simple participant, I can still choose how I will get there, if I will take all those leaflets, how I will network, if I'm taking the inspiration into action after the conference. And if I, for example, will fly to the conference, or if I will take 2 days instead of few hours to get there because I know that I can plan my agenda and I can spend some time in train. So at the end, I can tell you that after those 4 years in monastery in silence, the knowledge that the home and the place where we feel the best and very comfortable is our inner world. And to have time to discover what we need, what we want, and what is important to us is a first step for sustainable tourism on global level. Because if we will be conscious about our needs, we can be also conscious about what planet needs. So thank you for your time.
Sonia, let me just get that right. Did I properly understand that you were 4 years in silence? Days. I thought 4 years.
Days, 4 days in silence.
Good. So we have that clear. The question you triggered with your presentation in me about circularity had something to do with the word designing products and designing systems, and I think that is the question I would like right now to share with the fellow panelists here, and also thinking about what Richard mentioned at the beginning, the importance of planning. And Richard, you had a very complex, you used the word complex chart there, where you showed the elements which are influencing the tourism system. I have seen more complex, I have seen less complex. The contrast of the words Sonia used and Richard you used was planning, and here it was designing. But if we go deeper into that, designing products and designing the networks around those products to trigger what I think many of us agree to, that circularity, extracting resources, not just to use them once and dump them, linear economy, that circularity is a very useful concept which actually many people tell me existed already before, had a different word, and those who were exposed by external factors and triggered scarcity had to have a similar approach. But when we speak about something more complex, this design question, Sonia, you proposed here, designing products and processes. Martina, I want to start with you so that we try from here finding an answer. What is it you think we need to design in such a way that the tourism sector has systems of circularity?
Not easy question. Anyway, I use my example. I already showed about geoparks and their certification. These are kind of destinations. Of course, not only, because they have also other routes, but it's kind of tourism destinations. And as I explained, they have a kind of system of quality management, because each 4 years you need to prove. UNESCO sent evaluators to evaluate us, and they check in the terrain various aspects of this quality management. And many things Sonia mentioned are inside, like what kind of transport you offer to your visitors, for example, which is very important because everybody is moving in Geopark. Do you offer cycling? Do you offer connection to the local transport? Which kind of food? Do you involve local local farmers? The same during our conferences. We have really 2 pages of the criteria for conferences regarding many things mentioned by Sonia. So this is the system bottom up. They can afford to focus on various issues. This is not by state, but it is working very well. So I would stress this possibility of kind of bottom-up certification, but could be mixed also with the local government system, because all these, for example, geoparks heavily depend on the system which is on the local government. Of course, we can speak also about level of businesses. I can mention there are Czech people, there are maybe some examples of perfect circular accommodations like Hotel Galant, for example, which won the ecological Oscar in Czech Republic years ago, which is total circular. But as manager explained, it was team of experts and 4 years preparation. So it is not easy to have total circular when all the outputs are returned as inputs. Of course, he has a quite diverse economy. This hotel has winery, they have animals, they have conference room, they have system of using the warm air, etc. So it's not possible for each accommodation. But also these examples to show, to demonstrate, to be followed by the others is very important. And the last thing that I want to mention, again, you see this kind of battles. Other conferences, they have paper vases or one-use, single-use glasses or something like this. I want to stress what Sonia told. It's also personal responsibility of everybody. If you go to travel, you can decide many times which kind of accommodation, which kind of restaurant, which kind of food you will buy. I'm always buying on the local markets. So it means something you can change by yourself, something not, but there is also something in the middle, because you should understand the power of your demand. So you should ask, if you are sitting in the restaurant in the morning, why you have so many single-use things on the table, and you should provoke the manager, and you can tell that you dislike this approach.
Thank you, Martina. What I heard here was geoparks, places. So you need a place where that is to happen. Richard, you remember these 3 dimensions? Very often it happens in the area. Olivier spoke about the implementation gap. We then concluded it's very often at the local level. We call that in tourism destinations, especially the local destinations, where this implementation takes place. Then you spoke about catalytic. That is another word I heard through right now through the actions. The question is still what Sonia triggered before, designing systems, designing products. So you cannot touch everything at the same time, but you need to think about those actions which are triggering others. So catalytic. Then you mentioned the word transparency. That is or you didn't mention, but you highlighted the concept of transparency. That links to what I mentioned at the beginning, that the tourism product is actually a very complex product where trust and belief is a logical consequence, and if we create transparency, that helps. implementation I just mentioned, and then at the end you call about the personal responsibility and the incentives. So a lot of elements which are answering that design question, but I'm curious right now, Richard, with the classical planning wording and circularity, how would you see right now what Sonia just suggested to us, moving into a world of circularity in tourism? What would be the best approach to get there?
I think part of the problem is that as we have become more and more urbanized, we are less and less in touch with natural processes. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of holidays on a farm when I was about 8, 9, 10, and I learned how to milk a cow. I also learned how to clean up cow droppings from the barn, and then I had to put them in a bucket, put water in the mess, and tip it on the tomato plants in the greenhouse. It nearly put me off tomatoes for the rest of my life, the thought that these tomatoes have been growing in the cow dung, you know? And if you don't understand natural processes and recycling, and natural recycling, you're missing half the point. And the design is key, because normally when you design something, if you're designing it properly, you do it from before it starts till after it finishes. Now, whatever you think about oil and gas, if you ever look at the design plans for an oil rig, one of the things that normally, under good management, is required is what you do with the oil rig afterwards. Now, in some cases, not very well, but you design for the end of use. In tourism, we're nothing like that. We design to start and to operate, and then we sort of stop. There's the fire analogy. It's a little like pregnancy as well. It's sort of fun getting there, and then it grows. And then for the rest of your life, you're looking after the effects of it, and then grandchildren and so on. We need to look beyond the beginning and the operation. We need to look at the end, or if not the end, maybe the rundown. And part of the problem with COVID was, I think nobody had any mechanism for what happens if tourism stops. And I'm not sure how much preparation has really been done for the next pandemic or whatever it is that will cause a big block in tourism. But I think it should have served a lesson to us that if we design properly, we design for the end as well as the beginning. And so the circularity from beginning to end to the next whatever process is so critical, and it's so obvious, but it's so neglected.
Yeah. Richard, then you know, you have been marking right now the day for me, because you did something which I'm missing so much, that you linked the pandemic experience right now to this discussion. And I'm very sad that most of the people do see the pandemic no longer as what it actually was, that nature was speaking to us. And that was a very big reminder of unsustainable production and consumption. And thank you for the word of natural processes, which was bringing the, I would even say, the historical view into planning, and linking to Sonia's design question. Olivier, the thing, the little twist, because we need to come to your presentation, is, and it's tricky because we haven't reflected on that, but I saw you as a very flexible panelist. You will focus definitely right now in your reply on the importance of evidence in this design process, but can you also reflect on what Richard just was highlighting here, helping us to think about end of use, and I would rephrase it in that sense of simulating what could happen?
I mean, I can provide maybe some examples. And it's not going to go to the cow and the milk because, okay, I work in an IT company, so I mean, we are a bit further away from that. But still, we design applications. And when you design an application, you may have a way to design an application which is going to be, let's say, more efficient in the resources that it uses. So, for instance, we've been one of the few companies that have joined the Green Software Foundation, which is providing elements, benchmarks, way to develop application in a more, let's say, and I'm careful when I use those words, but in a more sustainable way. For instance, how many times you need to go between the application and the server. If you can limit those exchanges, you are going to limit the resources that are used. And now in all the applications that we develop, we are embedding a carbon calculator for the application so that we can tell also our customers what is the impact of those. So I don't know if it is really circular economy, but it's really taking care and being conscious of the impact of what you are doing when you are developing a product. In terms of planning, and again, I don't know if this is the same understanding of or the same meaning that you have in mind, but to reflect on what Sonia was saying about the SDGs, so the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, so 17 categories. And what is very interesting here, those are data points. And those are elements that we need to help people make decisions if, when they want to potentially travel more sustainably. So this is something that we've been looking at, those 17 categories, and we are working or trying to see how we can integrate those data points in the search process, in the booking process, so that if you want to go to a specific place, you can add certain search criteria on the SDGs. So, I mean, that's a way to integrate. And again, I mean, data is very important because here we need benchmarks, we need standards, we need data. I mean, without data, you won't measure or you won't be able to make a decision. So this is what we can do at our level of a technology company to go in those directions.
Sonia, final word after these reflections?
I would just highlight what was said with the design. And two things related to that. Get inspired by the nature, as Richard said. You can Google for concept biomimics or biomimicry in Czech language, just to follow what nature has designed and what works for millions of years. And the second thing, design for the whole life cycle. Don't design things for just usage phase. Don't design your trip just for the trip, but try to look for the whole cycle, and as you said, at the end, reflect if it works or not, and evaluate, and next time, do it better. And don't forget that design can affect 80% of the impact, approximately. It's a lot.
Thank you, Sonia. And the next speaker, Olivier Giraud, is the head of Sustainability Solutions. We discussed that yesterday quite a bit. Solutions at Amadeus. Olivier, the podium is yours.
Thank you very much. When Martina started, she said it was very difficult to speak after Richard. So imagine what it is to speak after Richard, Martina, and Sonia. I'm working for Amadeus. I don't know if you know what Amadeus is, but in a nutshell, this is a technology company for the travel and tourism industry. We are providing what we call cutting edge technology. We are 20,000 people from 150,000 nationality. And what I intend to do now is to share some concrete examples of what we are doing to address the environmental sustainability. And very often I like to start with that slide. It may seem a bit remote. That's the Amadeus purpose. And why is it important? Is because the purpose of a company is why a company exists. So I mean that's quite important. And you can read on that slide that there is a mention of making a positive contribution to people, places, and planet. And what it means that that part is really embedded into our strategy. It's not just about regulation, it's about how can we make a difference. Those figures were already mentioned, but the travel industry today is bringing a lot of opportunities, but also challenges. You see that growth indicator, 4% per year, after year, after year. So, I mean, if you reflect on that, just on the airline industry, I think today something like 4 billion passengers. It is estimated to be 8 to 10 billion passengers in 2050. So how can we reconcile growth and sustainability? So in Amadeus, we have a sustainability ambition. It is based on those 4 commitments. But I won't go into the 4 commitments, but tell you in a nutshell what is behind that. What we consider, or how we consider travel in Amadeus is we say travel is a force for good, and we acknowledge the positive and negative impact of it. And what we want to do is we want to have informed travelers making decisions on whether they want to travel and how they want to travel. And our role in Amadeus is to provide that information. Not to tell people what they have to do, but at least to provide that information. And we want also to help our customers. So we are a B2B company, so our customers are the travel sellers and the travel providers. We want to equip them with tools and solutions to mitigate the negative impact. And this is what I'm going to explain. So obviously, we start by ourselves. We are a company, we are a corporation, and we have our own environmental impact. So first, we have to understand what is our impact, the impact of our own operation, and we work on reducing it. How many people are familiar with SBTi? Not that many. So SBTi, Science-Based Target Initiative, is, let's say, a global framework that helps corporations to make sure that whatever they do to reduce their impact is in line with the Paris Agreement to limit the climate warming by 1.5 degrees by the end of the century. So this is something important that you have to, I mean, you go through that process and they tell you, yes, the plan to reduce your own emission is in line. And this is exactly what we've been doing. Like many other large corporations, we've been working on a plan, and it has been approved last year by SBTi. And you can read, or maybe you cannot read because it's too small, but you can read some of the commitments that we have. We have clear reduction emission targets. First, to reduce Scope 1 and Scope 2, and that, I mean, it's our own emissions, and that we will do it by buying more sustainable green energy. And the Scope 3, so the scope, the emissions of our value chain, it will be done by working with our vendors and work with vendors that are themselves reducing their own emissions. So, I mean, on that one, we are on the right track. I'm not saying that this is the best one, but I mean, this is a very good practice, what we are doing. But the important or interesting element is that one. And if you see that little chart, the 15,000 tons of it's our scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. So this is Amadeus scope 1 and scope 2. The 3.4 billion tons is the travel industry, or I could have put 1 billion ton for the airline industry. So when we compare our own emissions to the ones of the travel industry, you see that there is a big gap. And I mean, we can do as much as we can, and actually we do, to limit our own emissions. We can have a much bigger impact if we help our customers reduce their own emissions. So, I mean, this is really what we are aiming at, so supporting our customers and travelers. So here I mentioned two examples, and I will go into more details in a minute. So Amadeus Travel Impact Suite, to provide information to the travelers, and emission reduction through operational improvements. And I will also give you very concrete examples on how we can work with airports or airlines to help them reduce their own CO2 emissions. And obviously there is a third element here, which is collaborating with the industry. I mean, sustainability is not something that you achieve by yourself. You work in collaboration. I mean, that's the reason also why we've been invited by the UN Tourism. But I mean, we need to work and collaborate with the rest of the industry, especially to work on standards, because without standards, again, measurement is very difficult. So let me go through what in our solutions portfolio, so the solution we deliver to our customers, what we want to achieve. And you have those four elements. So first, inform, which is to help travelers make more informed decisions. So for instance, by providing CO2 information. Mitigate the negative travel impact, for instance, by providing IT solutions that will reduce fuel consumptions for instance, airlines. Encouraging positive impact at destinations. And for instance, we have a solution that is facilitating donation to NGOs. So, I mean, this is something that we can do through the Amadeus solution. And the last one include that we did not really mention today, but I think, Martina, you mentioned the social impact as part of sustainability. And this is what we can do with Include by providing more solutions, for instance, to help people with disabilities to travel. So let's go into the solution themselves. So Travel Impact Suite. Travel Impact Suite is to help travelers know the CO2 impact of their trip. So, I mean, this is a solution that we've developed and released last year. And actually, this is one of the only solutions that we've really developed with sustainability in mind. Many of the other solutions that we have in our portfolio, they have side benefits that are bringing environmental savings. I mean, that one, we really said, okay, we are going to develop solutions to help travelers make those more informed decisions. And you see here the reference to some companies, and I don't know if you know Travelis, if you know ICAO, Actris, Greenview, Green Tripper, but those are the providers of the CO2 information we then provide to our customers and to the travelers. One data point that I like to remind everybody, Amadeus, this is 500 million bookings every year. So 500 million bookings is potentially 500 million opportunities to help travelers, you, me, make, again, a more informed decision. So, I mean, this is the power that we can have. So, moving into the solution, so we are providing those information in all the steps of the traveler journey. So in the shopping, so when you are searching, when you are booking, in the travel document, in what you receive after you've booked, but also in analytics for travel agencies or for corporations. So, I mean, we are embedding that information in every step of the traveler journey. And to give you a concrete example of what that information brings. So what you see here is an example of a route, New York JFK to Singapore. And you see the different information about the CO2 impact of that route. Here, in that example, we are using the Travelist data set, and we are using what they call the typical flight emission, because this is what is providing the benchmark. So this is the 1,134 kilos that you see here. And actually what you see on the right are the different CO2 computation if you select one route or another. And you see is the one via Seoul, which is the least emitting, so 814 kilos. You have, so going to the same place, but via Haneda, so via Japan, you see that the result is 1,200 and something. So, I mean, 50% more CO2 emissions going to the same direction. So this is the type of information we provide to customers. What is interesting here is you have a direct flight. So you would say, okay, a direct flight, it's faster, so it should be the one emitting less. And actually, in that example, no. Because there are many elements in the computation of CO2. For instance, you have the type of equipment, but you see here, I mean, this is the same equipment that the one via Seoul, so you would say, okay. But you have also the load factor or the type of cabin you have in the plane. If you put a plane with only business class seats, obviously you put less people in the flight, so as it is computed per passenger, you would have a different result. So again, what we are doing here is providing the information to travelers. We are not saying to the traveler, don't take that flight. It's your own decision. But at least we are providing the information. And actually, this is not a product that we sell. This is a product that we provide for free to all of our customers. Let me go to the last example. This one is about IT solution and how we can help travel providers. So last year, we worked with Accenture to publish a study to validate the impact of some of our IT solutions on helping decarbonizing the airline industry. And we picked two solutions. So it's DCS weight and balance. It's for airline operations, and Sequence Manager for airport operations. And both of those solutions, they can provide and improve fuel efficiency. So they are cutting costs for the airline, which is very important, but they are also cutting carbon emissions. And they've been in use in airports and with airlines for many, many years. So it's not something totally new. It's things that have been there for quite some years. So those two solutions, and I will skip the details of exactly what they do, but Sequence Manager is optimizing the departure between the gate and the point of takeoff. So, I mean, you avoid congestions on airports. So, I mean, this is what it does. And the other one, flight management, it is optimizing the weight and balance of an aircraft. In an aircraft, you put cargo, you put passenger, and if you do the right balance of that, you are going to put less fuel on the aircraft. Less fuel on the aircraft is going to be less emission in the air. So, I mean, that's basically what we do with those two solutions. And actually, what that study showed, if all airlines and airports in the world were benefiting from those solutions, we could avoid 5.7 million tons of CO2. So I mean, this is a computation, and what those 5.7 million tons of CO2 represent, it is 0.6% of the total emission of the airline industry. So it might seem small, but this is something that you can do today, now, and this is how Amadeus, with the first example I provided and this one, can help a more sustainable travel and tourism industry. Thank you very much.
So we are right now with a very interesting statement which, Olivier, you did while you did your presentation. I'm not sure whether you are 100% aware of that, but do you remember how we started? The tourism product is a trust and belief product, and I gave you some of the challenges. Yeah, it's produced in the future, it's mainly immaterial, and it's away from the usual place where we are residing, so the purchase moment. And the most significant changes we have seen in the tourism sector over the last 30 years have actually resolved one of those challenges. The first thing was, you are too young, besides some of you are surfing now, you are too young to remember how we before used to take those decisions. We had gloomy catalogs, yeah? And then there was the internet. And you know, this enormous change which took place in our sector was provoked by one of the possibilities that we were able to share reviews, actually real experience about the tourism product from real tourists who went there. And so we created a new form of transparency. That is what we saw then on TripAdvisor and other platforms emerging, the reviews, real experiences. It's a service product, difficult to assess, but here an enormous impact. The other one was then Google Street View, and the way that we could actually double check a location before we are actually going there. So no longer could you just claim it's the nicest view and there's no construction taking place. All of a sudden there was transparency. Olivier, what you just did here, is this shift of paradigm. When we in the past said tourism is just about economics, very often in our public speeches we heard that from the authorities. We have had more arrivals, we have had more sales. And now my point, the distribution chain through which we are promoting the tourism product in the past basically communicated the product, the components of the product and their price. Now you send, and then through your distribution chain, to the point of sales, you are disseminating additional information to the point of sale, to the point where the customer can take a decision about what he's actually purchasing. So we add to economic information and those things which happened before in history, new transparency. Now my question for the fellow panelists is, how do you see the customers at the point of sale, when they are interacting, dealing with this information? How are they digesting that? What will that take right now? And let's give it a positive connotation. This transparency, what Olivier right now provided through the platform, Amadeus with its 500 million reservations, sales, it's doing each and every year one of the most important actors in the GDS systems. Shall I start with you? Oh, Sonia wants to. Okay, please.
I must, shortly, because we are half an hour late and I have to pick up my son from the kindergarten and they are really strict and I'm very sorry and I don't want to be unpolite by, just
no problem.
Going. I'd like to mention what I just said. If we talk about consumers or customers, the basics are to be well informed, as you said. Maybe starting already with the education. Being informed to me means that I have to be educated, to have critical thinking about what's happening around me, and then I have to be truly informed, and I have to be able to verify the information. So for me, it's very important. It's related to communication that I was mentioning in my presentation, but it's to be informed goes hand in hand with what I was mentioning as well, responsibility. We can't be just informed. We know very often what to do, but we have to feel that the final decision is up to us. And without the responsibility, which Indians, what you've been mentioning, are teaching their children, that once you are adult, you're responsible for the whole world. And this is something what I would love to leave you here with. And I'm truly sorry that I have to really run right now, but I will be happily in contact with all of you on LinkedIn or any other media. So thank you very much. Thank you for moderating this panel. Thank you to other panelists. I'm deeply sorry, but I have to go.
No problem, no problem. Martina, please.
Thank you, and thank you, Sonia, for all your contribution. Because she's just responsible for the baby, so I think it's nice. I totally agree and double underlined what she told now. Power of information is total mental. That's quite key. It's crucial for responsibility of anybody, because if you need to decide, you need precise information, objective, transparent. This is something what is really crucial. Not only for visitors to decide where to go, where to be accommodated, which kind of food or souvenir I will buy. Always I need very good information, because if not, my decision could be wrong and impact could be higher or more negative. But it pays also for other actors. The same pay for businessmen or government actors or police actors. So power of information, it was the strongest message for me in sustainability. And I will stress also the kind of importance of the information about the product in the quality of product, because anybody who is buying kind of product compare the value with the price always, which is quite important, is trend mainly in West, or let's say Euro-Atlantic society, that the quality of the product now has new aspect, not only color, not only taste, not only the usual quality as we perceive, but also kind of footprint which I will have. This is now perceived by minority, not all the society, as something which is part of the quality of the product. If my contribution or my impact, my footprint is negative or positive, and how much. This is something which should be noticed by designers of the product, because for people from Germany it's very important, because they feel guilty if their footprint is negative. And it's not fine for anybody. So this is important message for me. Thank you.
Richard, please.
I found it fascinating. I think it's a combination of outlook and ability. I think there are still a very large market of tourists out there who unfortunately are not the least bit interested. What they look for is the quickest, easiest, cheapest. Now you're helping the quickest and the easiest and the most environmental. Whether they pick up on that is another matter. But I think everybody here probably, is in the danger of assuming the mass market out there is the same as us. And I don't think it is. I think back when I had kids, my orientation, the places I went, the way I went, how long I stayed and whatever, was all conditioned by the kids. I had to go in school holidays. So all the stuff about going out of season and whatever, if you've got kids and they're in school, you're stuck. So that's a parameter. You can't get around, or not get around very easily. So I think it's brilliant what you've presented. I just hope there's a connect to what people want to do and take advantage of what is becoming available. We are getting the tools, there's no doubt. It's whether we get the mindset of the billion, of the 1.4 billion or whatever, to take advantage of it.
Olivier, I mean, with that right now, I assume you have an answer prepared, because Amadeus was not just developing that in the ivory tower. You must have been contacting customers of yours to evaluate already before the best way of serving their assessments of the future. So maybe in that you can try to reply, especially to Richard's point of talking to future generations or talking to those who are not maybe that ready.
Many questions in your question. So, I mean, first, we are a B2B company. So, I mean, we provide solutions, but it is the travel sellers, the travel providers that are implementing those. So we enable that information, but the one that putting that information on their reservation websites are the customers. So we can enable, we can help the adoptions. On the measurement of impact, it is really done on the on our customer website. You have to have a bit of faith in what you do. So, I mean, we are doing it also because we believe this is the, and again, I'm careful, but this is the right thing to do, to provide information. Actually, Amadeus was built as a GDS, as an aggregator of data, and for us, today, it is almost obvious that this type of information is something that we need to distribute. This is actually the reason why we are not making it a product, we are not selling that information, but just providing that information to anyone who can use it. It's true that there is also a difference of appreciation between, okay, maybe some of us or all of us in Europe or in Western Europe and the rest of the world. The growth is coming from Asia, the growth is coming from China, from India. Do they have the same concern about CO2 emissions? Is education about that, even the concept of the CO2 footprint there? No, but I mean, this is what we are helping, or not yet, or not enough. Okay, and again, here, I mean, I don't have the correct answer, just have a possible answer. But the importance of education is very, very important. So when we display CO2 information, we explain also the methodology. What is in it? I mean, I think it's Sonia who mentioned the life cycle assessment of how you measure that. So I mean, this is things that we are putting there. But again, here, coming back to one of your questions about governance or global governance, this is where we need global standards to say, okay, this is what, how you should compute CO2 emission for air. This is what, or how you should treat what is a sustainable accommodation, because, okay, what are the elements to just that? So here, this is the industry and the regulators need to work together to be able to bring that education much quicker than what we've seen so far.
Olivier, thank you very much. And I have here the questions which were asked from the floor. There's one which is, I think, which has not been addressed and answered by us, and it is a question for all of you. Just let's try to focus very sharply on it. It is asking what will happen if we are promoting those places which haven't experienced tourism so far, these new tourism places, in an attempt to diversify the tourism away from the hotspots where we experience right now massifications. What is it we can see in that question, which is related to virginity and careful anticipation of what we are allowing to happen in those places in the world? Just try to give a very short piece of advice to the person who answered, who asked this question. Richard, maybe you want to start.
I think it's a brilliant question. I think the only answer is be careful what you ask for, or what you wish for. I am concerned by some of my colleagues pushing the idea of degrowth and demarketing, because my concern is, where do they go? If you demarket and if you reduce the opportunity in order to lower the pressure on the hotspots, what happens to those people that don't go? Where do they go? And if they go to somewhere that is undeveloped, then they're going to bring all sorts of problems with them. So simply moving them from the center of Prague to somewhere in the Czech countryside is not a solution. It's moving the deck chairs on the Titanic. You're just putting the problem of unwanted or inappropriate tourists to somewhere else. And it goes back to what we've been saying about design and planning. If you are going to reduce choice and encourage people to go to other areas, the first thing before you do that is to make sure those areas are prepared and willing to accept the tourists that are coming, and that facilities are there, access arrangements are there, management and enforcement is there. It seems obvious, but it isn't happening. And so we get somewhere that appears in a movie and within a month is swamped by Instagram and everything else saying, this is where, the Faroes are a good example, the last James Bond film there, and you get a boom in tourism to Faroes, mostly of people who really have no idea what the Faroes are like or what they're going to do when they get there. And that's a real problem, and one that I think is going to grow. So I think it's a brilliant question. I don't think we've got the answer, because we're just moving the problem around. And there isn't an easy answer to it.
Martina, Olivier, you want to add to that?
50% was said already by Richard. Totally agree. Yeah, we dealt with this issue many times, so I don't want to repeat what was said already, but I give you example from protected areas, because they really need to somehow tackle this issue of tourism flows, and you have always kind of bottlenecks in the territory. And that's why they try kind of visitor management and to influence the flows of tourists, sometimes to show them alternative which is not over tourism impacted. But you open the virgin place and you don't know what happens. It was told already. So you need to know, as was said, if the local people are expecting and willing to have tourism here, if the ecosystem has absorption capacity, if it's not too fragile. These are all these questions. But the major thing is, because I mentioned carrying capacity and its flexibility through visitor management, which is what we are speaking now again about. And it means that we shouldn't think just about space, because you mentioned space, but there's also time. And maybe it's necessary to think about time-space management of the tourist flows. So this is giving you more flexibility. But even some times are fragile, because we were speaking about nature cycles, etc. So also nature needs some time to recover, etc. So, as was said, there is actually no research results yet if this technique of pushing or declining some tourists from over-tourism places or over-touristed places to more virgin, if it's really effective, because in many protected areas, they stopped this strategy because they found out that it's even more worse after using this strategy, because some places which were like reserve and powerful ecosystem are damaged also by tourism, and tourists continue to visit the most attractive place. You can't distract and dismarket them. So they go to the most favorite place and to new places which are on the offer. So that's my vision.
Thank you, Martina. Olivier?
Are you sure that they want me to answer that question?
No, but please, you have the chance.
Okay, so I can give a last example. And again, how technology can help on that. Because, I mean, talking about over-tourism, I mean, you have the same or similar pattern with peak flights and off-peak flights. And one example of how technology can help, we have one solution that some airlines have implemented. What they do, they contact people that are booked on the peak flights. And the peak flights, you know that you're going to have a lot of demand, and your peak flights will always be full. So if you can, through incentives, through gamification, help people on the peak flight to choose a non-peak flights with the same capacity, so you're not putting extra flight, you can flatten the curve that you showed. I mean, you had one slide with the 3 curves, and you need to flatten that. So, I mean, again, technology can help and provide some of those solutions. I mean, can it provide a global solution to every problem? I won't go that far.
Olivier, Richard, Martina, thank you very much for sharing this extra time with us here and for traveling a long way of being with us here. Martina, in your case, the distance was a bit shorter. I thank you for this conversation and this reflection, and I hope for those in the room who remained, we have triggered something in your heads, and that is the most important thing. Otherwise, I wish you a wonderful lunch, and we are available for any questions you might have, but here we end the session, and I thank my panelists very much for their patience and for being so sharp and interesting. Thank you very much for your presentations. Thank you. Thank you.